Hi, I'm David Goyer, writer of the soon-to-be-released film Blade Trinity, the third film in the Blade series, and I'm here today with the director of Blade Trinity, David Goyer.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So, the script for Blade Trinity, I personally happen to think it's the best of the bunch, but why did you choose to direct it?
The script was funny, and it was different, and I thought it was an opportunity to not do what the audience would expect. And one of the things that I thought was cool about the first Blade film and the second Blade film is that they were very different. They didn't just rehash the first film, and it kind of turns the whole vampire mythology up on its end. Okay, so I have a question for you now. You know, unique weaponry has always been a staple of the Blade films. How did you feel that I handled the weaponry in this film?
Well, you stuck to what was written on the page, so that was a nice start. Actually, I was a big fan of what happened with Abigail's UV arc. I think that turned out to be a real crowd pleaser. It was very cool. I like the sun dogs, which are these sort of UV bullets. I like the way that the ashings are different when, you know, Hannibal King fires that gun. I thought Wesley's chain knife at the beginning of the film is a really cool addition. That was neat, too. So I wrote all three Blade films. I know there were points during the production of the first two Blade films where the directors wanted to curse me as a writer because I had written things that were difficult to film, but I mean, that never happened to you, right?
You know, it just happens, and I know that there were times when Norrington and Guillermo had to call, you know, you up and say, we got to change what's on the page, and you know, sometimes it happens. That's the difference between directing something and writing it. Writing the screenplay it's just the battle plan, but as we all know, sometimes the battle unfolds in a way that's different from the way it was planned.
Okay, so in my mind, Wesley Snipes was always the definitive Blade. He was the person that I had in mind when I wrote the first script. But for the new film, as a director, you've definitely made some interesting sort of offbeat casting choices. Can you tell me about those? Jessica Biel, Ryan Reynolds, Parker Posey.
Look, as a director, I like to do things that people wouldn't expect, and I like to cast people in roles that they wouldn't necessarily expect to see. Ryan Reynolds was known primarily for comedy, and certainly the character of Hannibal King is comedic to a certain extent, but he's also a really credible action figure, and I knew Ryan could pull it off. Jessica Biel, again, plays something different. I mean, she's sort of the version of Linda Hamilton in T2 in this movie. She's just a complete killing machine. And Parker Posey, again, not who you would expect for this kind of film, but that's why I like it. That's why I think it's different and exciting. She's kind of the female equivalent of what Stephen Dorff was in the first film. You know, again, we didn't cast a Christopher Lee type as a vampire. We went in a different direction. And I just think it spices it up. It's not what you would expect. Now, I've noticed that you've been hanging out on the official Blade Trinity website on the message board. What's it like mixing it up with the fans?
It's an interesting way to get their feedback, and you know, the fans represent the core audience for films like this, and you know, they're geeks just like me, you know, when I was growing up. But I didn't have the internet. I couldn't connect with directors and writers and producers, so it's just a fun way to have a dialogue. All right, so there are all these rumors on the internet about whether or not there's going to be a Blade 4 or a Night Stalkers film. Now that you're a big hotshot director and you're in the know, what can you tell us about that? Are the rumors true? Can you dispel them?
Yeah, you had to ask that question, didn't you? Yeah, there are a lot of rumors flying around on the net. Is there going to be a Blade 4? Is Blade going to die? Is Blade going to turn evil? Is there going to be a Night Stalkers? Is Blade going to make a cameo in the Night Stalkers? The truth is, any one of those scenarios could happen. And I'm certainly not going to give any spoilers away.
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay, so in Blade Trinity, we created the ultimate vampire, Drake. As a writer, how did you rise to that challenge? How did you top yourself for the other two films?
It's difficult. I mean, I remember being worried in the second film what we were going to do to kind of up the stakes. And then I thought, oh, my God, now I've got to do it for a third film and up the stakes yet again. But you know, I knew we had to come up with something different, and it just seemed like we might as well go back to the well, go back to the source, which meant the original Marvel Comics, Tomb of Dracula comics, that Blade was a supporting character in. And I just thought, well, who better to have Blade go up against than Dracula? So one last thing. I want to ask you about the ending. Did you film the ending I wrote?
I shot what the writer wrote, and that's one version of what I shot, but we also did some other versions, and we're playing around with what we think works best, and I can't guarantee that what the writer wrote in that case will be what ends up in the film that's released in theaters, although there will at least be a version of that on the DVD.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, David.
No problem.